hijackers. Why don't you say which
Well,
hijacker?
Muhammad Ath is not the only hijacker.
Well, I mean, wouldn't you think that it might be pertinent to mention which one since you know about this?
Well, I didn't know offhand which one. I just remembered seeing
Well,
it.
why
Was
don't you
looking up
give
all their
us?
addresses.
Think about it. I
So I
mean,
have
you
to
made a
go look
claim.
at it.
Why don't you just prove it, dude?
I will go do that after this interview.
Well, I mean, you came here today. What do you think? We're going to lounge here and fucking eat snow cones? Or are we going to talk about what you've done for the past 18 years?
Hi everyone, I hope that you've been having a great weekend. It is, for me, going to be a short week, so that's because of the religious holiday, Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, and I would say that this year, I think, is starting off. I need a lot more focus, and I am trying to make some more moves in my personal life. So hopefully we'll be doing more, but I don't know if that's going to be more on YouTube or more elsewhere. At the moment, I'm writing a lot more than I am filming videos. So last week, you probably remember, and this video is actually right here where my cursor is. I had a debate with Ryan Dawson, the head of Anti-Neocon Report. I think he might be the only author there. And he was trying to make the case that the five dancing Israelis, Omer Marmari, Paul and Sivan Kurtzberg, Oded Elner, and Yaron Shemuel, that they had been in some way connected to the plot to attack the World Trade Center and the Pentagon on 9/11, as well as, of course, the issue with United Flight 93, which ended up crashing in Pennsylvania. And for me, that has been, I guess, a focus for a couple weeks, and I understand if some people are getting tired of it, but I will never be tired about discussing a topic where I believe someone's been falsely accused. Okay, and I go through that at the beginning, really, where I see people who are essentially making a living off of telling lies. You could say it was with some of these journalists and prosecutors during the Duke Lacrosse case, a rape on campus case, which is directly one of the reasons that I started writing again. There was the Gouda chemical attack, which I think people should probably be open about, was not really committed by the Assad government. You don't have to like the Assad government. I don't believe that they were complicit in that. I think that it was committed by the jihadist forces over there. And then there's the Kuwaiti incubators controversy and Pallywood, which is staged acts of violence over in the West Bank and Gaza by Palestinians. So I don't believe that in order to create some sort of greater improvement in life, you should be able to create some sort of mass media hysteria over something that hasn't happened. Now, if you like the content that I produce in my writing, you can on at least this. So I do write for other publications. I wrote 2 pieces for Federalist, 1 for American Greatness. But if you like the blog, there's a subscribe button up here. You should be able to get alerts directly to your email, I believe. And we'll get right into it. So last week, there were a number of big controversies that were in our debate. And I think we got the debate off on the wrong foot because we didn't explain exactly some of the basic parameters to it. So we're going to go through it. And then we're going to try to run through some of these points, and I've linked all of the pages in the report, the FBI report, to it, so you can decide for yourself what you think is essentially the best side of the argument. So we'll start first with the basic facts. At 3:56 p.m. on September 11th, on New Jersey's Route 3, a van was detained by East Rutherford Police Department belonging to Urban Moving Systems. The van's plate number JRJ13Y had been provided by a tip to police earlier in the day by a woman that had observed the van's occupant celebrating on the roof of the van at 100 Manhattan Avenue, Union City, New Jersey, also known as the Doric Apartments. Inside were 5 men: Omer Marmari, Yaron Shemuel, Paul and Sivan Kurtzberg, and Oded Elner, all of them Israeli nationals. The men were accused of having video recorded the September 11th attacks and were found with a Canon EOS Rebel 2000 still photo camera and 3 rolls of film. The men attracted further scrutiny because they are all Israeli citizens living in the U.S. on tourist visas and working under the table for UMS's movers, as well as the military intelligence functions the 2 of them performed during their military service. During their interrogations, the suspects made several statements pertaining to the timeline of their day, such as the time of their arrival at work. Now, some of those statements appear to have been either false or just untrue. Okay, false would be that they would lie. Untrue, I guess, would be that they were inaccurate. Images of the men taken on the rooftop of UMS offices at 3 18th Street, Weehawken, New Jersey, validated accusations that they had had gleeful facial expressions on the backdrop of the Manhattan skyline during the morning of the attacks. However, the images and other behavior of theirs do not illustrate that they had begun photographing, videotaping prior to the attacks. For further treatment of this, see my prior article from July. So that's to the one replying to Whitney Webb, who, by the way, has blocked me on Twitter because she can't even defend her own story. A second UMS van was arrested on I-80 in Pennsylvania near the junction with Route 88 in the vicinity of Jersey Shore, Pennsylvania at noon on September 12th due to the general be on the lookout alert put out by law enforcement. During the course of our conversation lasting 134 minutes, Dawson made several factual misstatements on the topic, despite the fact that, according to him, he has spent the better part of the past 2 decades working to get to the truth. Where the 6-part FBI report is cited, I link it with both the part and reference. So time of arrival is an important issue, and that's why I led with it. Unfortunately, without the basic facts that I outlined in the previous section, the introduction, it doesn't really make much sense. But in order for the van to have arrived at before 8:46 a.m., which is when the North Tower of the World Trade Center had been attacked, and American Airlines Flight 11, which was being commandeered by Mohammed Atta, crashed into it. You have to be able to reconcile the timeline. Okay, now one of the witnesses said that the van was in the parking lot as early as 8 a.m. on the morning of the explosions at the World Trade Center. Okay, but the witness doesn't give any further description for the van besides saying it was a white van. A second witness, this is on part 1, page 29, claimed to have seen at 8:15 a.m. a male individual appearing to have a brown but not dark complexion, round face, dark hair, approximately age 30s, driving the van. This witness did not see any visible passengers and claimed that the van had lettering on it that said electrical supplies. So I would throw this witness as actually someone that corroborates the defense, because if he sees different lettering on the van, there's absolutely no way to prove that it was the 3 people who went to the Doric Towers who were in it. This does not match the description of the UMS van and suggests that there had been a different vehicle in the lot that morning prior to their arrival. Other witnesses had cited the individuals in the vicinity of the Doric or within it the day before, as Dawson claims, but this was consistent with a further witness statement from a witness, presumably a Doric employee, that affirmed that UMS had had a scheduled move out of a resident couple on the 10th. Okay, so when Ryan Dawson claims that they had been casing the apartment, what he really means is that they had been doing their job, which was to move a couple out of the apartment building. And if you're casing the apartment building for the best view, why would you go to the parking lot and not for an actually higher view somewhere on one of the floors of the building? Perhaps there was a window looking out onto Manhattan that would have been an even better view. Why would you go into the parking lot and then have to climb onto the van and then look at Manhattan? But even if you discount all of that, not a single person saw any of the men themselves between 8 a.m. and the collision of the plane into the towers. Citing a van, and possibly the wrong van, belonging to an electrical supplies company is not proof. The main witness, labeled T1 in the file and called Maria by Dawson and media reports, stated that she was called at approximately 9 a.m. She was called by a neighbor, T2, to tell her that the World Trade Center was on fire. Therefore, there are no known witnesses that can claim to have seen the suspects prior to 9 a.m. Another witness, part 5, page 25, mentions seeing the men between 9 and 9:10 a.m. while painting one of the suites of the Doric. So these people were seen at the Doric. They actually, I think 2 of them have been, or 3 of them have been photographed at the Doric by themselves. They switched places, behaving like idiots while the World Trade Center is burning down. But it's not the best view. That's something that I addressed in the previous article, which is from July. And in fact, if you really think about it, the only witnesses that saw anything before 9 a.m. only saw a van. They didn't see the people. So what were the guys doing there before 9 a.m.? I mean, there were cigarette butts that were collected at the scene. Why weren't they smoking out there waiting for the towers to be attacked? You don't see any of that. In fact, you see them smoking in the photo. So what did they collect the cigarette butts from their previous cigarettes? Now, there's also a disagreement that we had about the map, including not just between me and Dawson, but between me and Halsey. Halsey claimed that you could do the journey from the Brooklyn end of the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel all the way to Manhattan Avenue in Jersey City in 17 minutes. And he said he punched it into his map. What I believe he did was he punched it into the map at 11:30 or so, but maybe even 12 a.m. when there's very light traffic. What you have to do is you put it in at exactly the time and the day of the week, which is 7:48 a.m. on Tuesday, September 24th. And from that point, it takes 26 to 55 minutes. So the earliest that they had arrived would have been at about 8:24 a.m., which would have been after the second witness that saw the van at 8:15. It would have probably been, according to Google Maps, an arrival at around 8:43 a.m., which would have meant that they would have been just early enough to catch the first tower being hit. So technically, they could have made it all the way if you discount the fact that people did see them at the UMS office in Weehawken prior to that. So if you say, which is what Ryan maintains, that the witnesses from Urban Moving Systems were lying when they said that the men had stopped at work and then ended up going to the Doric apartments, okay, then it makes sense, because technically you could drive, you could put your foot on the gas pedal and arrive at the apartments before the first plane hit the tower if you knew that up to the minute that the plane would hit the tower at 8:46 a.m. Okay, that's a pretty tight squeeze. In fact, if there is a real traffic jam, you risk you risk actually being in southern Manhattan when the plane hits the tower. Okay, and it's not as if New York is a strange place to have a traffic jam in the morning. Another thing that we went into, so this is just a part 1, and there's going to be a lot more, is that Ryan Dawson claimed that one of the movers, Yaron Shemuel, had lived next to hijackers, and that one of the hijackers had been moved by a fellow moving company, one that had been their number had been in the file, it had been in the phone book of one of the people arrested in New Jersey, Classic International Movers, and Abdulaziz Al-Omari, who was one of the muscle hijackers who was with Mohammed Atta on American Airlines Flight 11. He claimed that he had been moved by Classic International Movers. Now, that had been according to the FBI Miami section. However, he also ended up claiming, Dawson did, that Yaron Shemuel, who doesn't work for Classic International Movers, he worked for Urban Moving Systems. He claimed that he lived next door to hijackers. Now, I'm going to read this really fast as I can, because it's going to be pretty repetitive. According to various reports, Shemuel had established a residence on Drexel Avenue in Miami Beach. In the video, Dawson alleges that the move had been to bring Al-Omari from Florida to New Jersey. When challenged on this by me, he claimed that it was irrelevant whether it was in one direction or the other. So that is important because Al-Omari didn't move from Florida to New Jersey, thereby making Shemuel closer to him, even though in reality he would have been living in New Jersey. Al-Omari was living in New Jersey, in Paterson, for a very short period in August, whereas Shemuel was living not in New Jersey at all. He was living in Brooklyn. He was living close to Park Slope, by the way. However, the record shows from Musawi versus USA that Al-Omari arrived in the USA on June 29, 2001 and lived at various addresses in Queens and New Jersey thereafter, including at Mohammed Atta's Paterson, New Jersey apartment. Then on August 9th, he departed for southern Florida from Newark and established residency at an apartment in Vero Beach, 151 miles away from the Miami Beach apartment where Shemuel had been living. So he doesn't live anywhere near him when they're both living in the New York, New Jersey area. One's living in Brooklyn, the other one's living in Paterson, New Jersey. When they're living in Florida, one of them lives in Vero Beach. That's Abdulaziz Al-Omari. And the other one's living in Miami Beach. Those are miles and miles and miles away, much even further than Paterson and Brooklyn. When challenged on this, Dawson had said that he meant other hijackers, but refused to name which one. So this is something that came up over and over again. I challenge him on a specific detail. He doesn't know where it came from. He doesn't know what the detail is. He doesn't know any of it. It was one of many instances where, when he refused to discuss specific claims that he had made, in order to test his hypothesis, I will specify the known residences and other overnight lodging locations of the other hijackers based on evidence from the Musawi case, unless otherwise specified. So then I go through literally every known residence of all of the 19 hijackers, and none of them are in Miami Beach. So you have Atta, who is in Paterson, Wayne, and Elmwood Park, New Jersey. In Florida, he was in Hollywood, Delray Beach, Boynton Beach. He was in Las Vegas. He was in South Portland, Maine. Neither of these towns are next door to Miami Beach, and they are in Palm Beach and Broward, the two counties north of Miami-Dade County. So not only do they not live next door, which is that's a phrase that Dawson repeats endlessly. They typically live in other counties. They live pretty far away from where Shemuel lived, and he doesn't even know when Yaron Shemuel lived there. He doesn't even know if he lived there at the same time as them. Al-Omari lived in Woodside, New York, in Elmwood Park and Wayne and South Hackensack and Newton, Massachusetts. Those are all in New Jersey except for Newton. And then he lived in Vero Beach, Florida. Then you have the trio of Walid al-Shari, and Satam al-Sukami. They all lived in a budget motel in Boynton Beach. So anyway, you can go through this list. I have it over here. None of them lived in Miami Beach. So he's basically, this is the issue. He can claim that maybe the Mossad was tracking these people. He can claim that there were agents on the ground that were going after them, but he can't prove, according to any public record, whether it's court documents, whether it's the FBI file, whether it's media reports, he can't claim that the specific person that he is saying lived next to hijackers. He can't prove it because there is no proof. There's no proof that Yaron Shemuel, one of the 5 people who was in the van on September 11th, arrested in New Jersey, he can't prove that he lived next to him, but he won't give up on that. And therefore, I'll tell you, there's going to be 2 other parts that are, the second part's already finished. The third part is not finished yet. They're all going to be published at some point. And if you're a person who has been, a believer in Ryan Dawson's ideas, I urge you, read it. That's why I call it the Ryan Dawson Refund Guide, Part 1 over here. And you can pretty much get a feeling as to how much you've been suckered all these years, having to pay for his $25 DVDs, and he's asking for donations and memberships and all of that. There's no basis to whatever he's talking about. No basis in the facts. And this is me using, in many cases, the same sources as he does. Okay, he's basically trusting that you won't go and check yourself. So I checked all of it, and you can go check yourself and see who's right and wrong. So besides that, please like, share, and subscribe. Also subscribe to me on BitChute and also on Minds.com and on Subscribestar. You can also find me on Gab. All of those are Chef Leopard, except for Gab, which is at Starscream85.
Inside my future, what I see just makes me cry.